This Parsha podcast is dedicated in loving memory and Lilu Nishmas Yita Rachel Bat Binyamin. May her soul be elevated in heaven. We have a new Parsha, and guess what? We have a new villain. It's Parshas Korach, and the entire Parsha revolves around Korach's rebellion and its aftermath. Korach is one of the interesting and troubled figures in the Torah. He's Moshe's first cousin, and he, together with 253 men, 3 men from the tribe of Reuven, Dathan, and Abiram, and On ben Pelas, plus 250 leaders of the people whose names we don't know, they rebel against Moshe. Why did Korach rebel against his cousin? So Rashi tells us at the very beginning of the story, he was envious of the appointment of another cousin, Elitzaphan ben Uziel, son of Uziel, who was made the president of the Levite family of Kehas. And this was a position that Korach thought was rightfully his, and his argument was fairly sound. So Levi has 3 sons. Kehas is the son in question. Kehas has 4 sons. So Levi, Kehas now has 4 sons. The eldest son is Amram, father of Moshe and Aaron. So it made sense that Amram's family will get the first crack at the prestigious roles distributed to this family of Kehas. Moshe became the leader. He's the king. And Aaron, he is the spiritual leader. He's the high priest. And there are no more sons to this family. So if there's another role, another promotion available, it should go to the eldest son of the next son of Kehas. The second eldest son of Kehas is Yitzhar, Korach's father. So this is a complicated genealogy. We don't like to do mathematics on the podcast, nor genealogy, but just to simplify it, in this family, there are a bunch of cousins, and the 2 oldest ones, or the 2 ones who are attributed to the oldest brother, that is Moshe and Aaron, and Korach is next in line. And there's another appointment to be given. Who's going to be the Nasi, the president of the Levite family of Kehas? It should go to Korach. And Moshe appoints Elitzaphan, the son of the youngest son of Kehas. And Korach, as a result, launches a wide-scale rebellion against Moshe and against Aaron. The first thing we see, the most important variable in Korach's insurrection, is that he was envious. He was envious of the appointment that he believed was rightfully his, and that's the root of Korach's mistake. And we find a long trail of envy in Korach's backstory. Korach was very wealthy, we learn. How wealthy was he? Says the Midrash. He was the wealthiest Jew of all time. In all of history, there was one outrageously wealthy Jew, and that's Korach. And there's one outrageously wealthy non-Jew, and that's Haman. But neither of them got their wealth in an honest manner, and neither of them were able to enjoy their wealth. They both snatched their wealth, and they were both unsatiated. They both wanted more. How did Korach get rich? So our sages tell us that he found a treasure. He found a treasure house. He found the vast treasures of Joseph. Joseph in Egypt, he stockpiled all the world's wealth, and he hid it, and Korach found it. And that's how he became so wealthy. That's what the Midrash tells us. And Haman, he also became wealthy in a non-honest manner. He stole the treasure houses of the kings of Judah. And because they didn't earn it with integrity and honesty, they snatched it. They didn't get to enjoy it. Their wealth was to their detriment. The Talmud sounds almost hyperbolic, a description of Korach's empire. This is what it says. Sounds like it's an exaggeration. Korach had keys to the safes. So think about it. If you have one safe, you can put a lot of stuff in there. But imagine if you had two safes, you would have to have two keys, right? How many keys did Korach have for all of his treasure storehouses? You needed 300 white mules to carry all the keys that held the access to Korach's wealth. Now, what's very interesting about this story is that Korach earned it in a non-proper manner. You see, at the time of the Exodus, the people were instructed to borrow valuables from the Egyptians. You recall, God promised Abraham that when your descendants leave Egypt, they're going to leave with great wealth. So God tells Moshe, please tell the people to go to their neighbors and borrow. We just want to borrow your gold, your jewels, your gems, your valuables. We just want to borrow it. And God created artificial charm. The request was irresistible. God effectively compelled the Egyptians to accede to the Israelites' request, and thus they left with great wealth. Now, the Talmud tells us this was not theft. This was effectively payment for years of enslavement. The nation was enslaved in Egypt unjustly. They were paid a balloon payment at the end. They went to the Egyptians. They borrowed all of the wages for decades and decades of servitude. But some of the Israelites were not enslaved. The Levites were never enslaved in Egypt, and therefore they had no right to claim lost wages or unpaid wages. So the Levites were not entitled to go borrow from the neighbors. If they were to go to the neighbors would say, I'm not giving you my gold. What are you, nutso? So the Israelites have this explosion of wealth, and the Levites are not part of it. And Korach was envious. And he was so envious of all of his brethren getting rich while he remains not rich, that he had this envy that was biting away at him. It was eating him up. And we know that when someone deeply, 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 deeply desires something, they will be led from heaven in the path that they choose. So Korach, of all the Levites, he was so desirous. He was going out of his mind with desire for wealth. And he had such envy was biting at him, seeing all the Israelites getting rich. God said, okay, I'll make you rich as well. And he revealed to him the location of the secret treasuries of Joseph. But he wasn't satisfied. He wanted more. How much more? He wanted to be the head of the family. And he really wanted to be the high priest. And he wanted to supplant Moshe. He desired. He was insatiable. And ultimately, the wealth led him down a bad place. And all that wealth was swallowed up in the sinkhole. Now, Korach was not the only member of his family that was stricken with envy. His wife, the Midrash tells us, she too was envious. It's a very dramatic description. It describes how Mrs. Korach, she was bedecked. She was dripping with magnificent jewelry, top to bottom, unparalleled by anyone else, almost anyone else. You see, Moshe was a Levite, and he ended up becoming very rich. How did Moshe become rich? So the Talmud tells us that when God told Moshe to craft the second set of tablets, so Moshe had to hew this massive sapphire stone, the stone that's going to be made into the tablets. And God said to Moshe, all the chips from the tablets, all the parts that are not part of the tablets, but you chip off, when you hew, all that's yours. And that's how Moshe became very rich. And Moshe took some of the chipped residue of the tablets, and he made a magnificent, stunning piece of jewelry for his wife, Tzipporah, says the Midrash. And Mrs. Korach, she's like the number one socialite. She has all the best jewelry. She sees Tzipporah. She gets envious. She has even grander jewelry. And she prods, incites, goads her husband to rebel. And the Talmud says that she told her husband, look at this. Look at your cousins. They're grabbing everything for themselves. Your cousin Moshe, he makes himself into the king. And your cousin Moshe makes his brother, your other cousin Aaron, into the high priest. And then, his nephews, they're the associate priest, and all you are is a lousy Levite. Oh yeah, you do get the tithes. The first tithe goes to the Levite, but what do you have to do with that? The Levite who gets the tithe has to tithe. He has to tithe for tithe. He has to give 10% of that to the Kohen. And the worst thing is that when you are consecrated to be a Levite, he made you shave yourself completely bald like a cucumber. He's just toying with you. He's teasing you. He's mocking you. He's denigrating you. That's what Mrs. Korach, in her envy, tells Korach, the exemplar of envy. And Korach responds, well, Moshe's also a Levite, and he's also bald like a cucumber. And she says, no. He's willing to go through the shame of being shaved just to make you look absurd. Korach's envy, coupled with his wife's envy, he gets incited, he gets instigated, he gets fomented by his wife, and he launches an insurrection. And he gangs up against Moshe and against Aaron. And he says, Rav lachem, you took too much for yourself. All the greatness you took for yourself. Kol ha'eda, the entire congregation is entirely holy. God spoke to the whole nation at Sinai. It wasn't just to you, Moshe. We're all holy. Everyone heard prophecy at Sinai. Why do you reign supreme over the people? Rashi tells us something very interesting. Korach is envious about another cousin, Elisaphan ben Uziel, but he's targeting not that role, he wants something else. He tells Moshe, you're the king. But why did you have to give your brother the exclusivity of priesthood? God spoke to the whole nation. The whole nation's holy. Everyone should have a crack at that as well. I should have a crack at the high priesthood as well. If you read this exchange very carefully, you find something interesting. Korach didn't actually want Moshe's position. Moshe's the king, Aaron's the high priest. He wanted the high priesthood. And that's why Moshe says, okay, you want to be the incense? You want to try that? Korach did not seek to be the king. He wanted to be the priest. Why didn't Korach target Moshe's position? Why does he only go after the priesthood? The king's a pretty cool gig. You get the palace, the prestige, red carpets, a crown. There's a lot of honor accorded to a king. But Korach doesn't want it. Why doesn't Korach want it? It seems like Korach had a vision of what it means to be king, and that he wanted to avoid. He wanted the priesthood. What's a king? A king comes from the tribe of Judah. And the essence of Judah in every story about Judah in the Torah, it's about responsibility. He takes responsibility for his brother Benjamin. He's willing to endanger himself for others. Nachshon, the head of the tribe of Judah, the one who secured the monarchy for the tribe of Judah forever, what did he do? It's not glamorous. It's kind of frightening. He is leaping into the ferocious waters while everyone else is cowering in fear. That's what a king is. To take responsibility for the whole nation and to do things that everyone else is scared to do. Korach didn't want that. He tells Moshe, he tells Aaron, he tells the whole nation, the entire congregation is holy. Holy. Not everyone's a king. Everyone's holy. When it comes to responsibility, he's willing to pass the buck. He's willing to forego. He's targeting Aaron's role. If the whole nation is entirely holy, well, why is Aaron the only one of the holy of holies? Now, the truth is, Korach could have had a very sound argument. Because Moshe himself tells the nation, before the Sinai Revelation, you will be for God, mamleches kohanim, a kingdom of priests, and a holy nation. So if the whole nation is a kingdom of priests, there seems to be some grounds for Korach's perspective. But I think Korach misunderstood what the priesthood is as well. It's very cool to walk into the Holy of Holies and to bring all these sacrifices and to have the tremendous prestige and stature of the high priest. But God, before Sinai, promised the nation will be a kingdom of priests. Even a priest is a kind of king. What does a priest have to do? What is the responsibility of a high priest? The responsibility of a high priest is to be spiritually responsible for the entire nation. Aaron is the prototype. He's the paradigmatic example of a high priest. And we see what are his attributes. He's the paragon of seeking peace, pursuing peace. We have documentation of the funeral of Aaron. There were 80,000 boys named Aaron that were walking behind his coffin. Why were there 80,000 Aarons? Because these were the boys born from families that wanted to get divorced because they were fighting, and Aaron ameliorated their fight, resolved their conflict, restored peace. They had a baby. They named him after Aaron. Aaron is this totally selfless person who cares about others, who wants others to flourish, and is willing to do whatever it takes to make sure that others do well. If there is a tragedy that happens in the nation, our sources say, who's at fault? It's the high priest. If someone on the other side of the country kills another person accidentally, who's to blame? Says the Talmud, the high priest is to blame. And that's why when the high priest perishes, when he dies, all the accidental murderers are freed. Because he's paid for his crime. He didn't do anything. He was in the temple. Why is he responsible for an accident, a tragedy that happens on the other side of the country? Says the Talmud, because he should have prayed. That's the job. The job of the high priest is to be responsible for the entire nation. Korach, maybe if he knew that, if he knew what it really means to be a priest, he would say, thanks, but no thanks. It's not just the experiences, it's the responsibility. It's a kingdom of priests. Moshe says to him, you want to be high priest? Let's see what you're made of. Let's see you bring the ktores, the incense. Korach found that opportunity tantalizing. That's amazing. I'm in. Moshe says, are you sure? I'm sure. We're going to have a showdown tomorrow, says Moshe. Take your shovels, put a fire upon it, put the incense upon it, and let us see who God chooses. Who is the Holy One of God? Who is the one that he wants to be the priest? You say everyone is holy? Let's see. Now Moshe tries to speech sense to Korach. You're a Levite, after all. You have special roles in the tabernacle. You do some service in the tabernacle. You guard the tabernacle. You sing in the tabernacle. You're in charge of the transportation of the tabernacle. You're close to God. You're selected, consecrated by God. You also want to be a priest? You're envious now? You're insatiable now? Moshe's impassioned words fell upon deaf ears. Korach was committed and unbending. Moshe then tried to speak to Dathan and Abiram. He wasn't willing to give up on them as well. He wanted to provide an off-ramp for these Johnny Rebs, but they refused. And they tell Moshe, unbelievable what they say. You took us out of a land flowing with milk and honey, Egypt. That's where we want to be. If you puncture out our eyes, we still won't come to talk to you. And it's interesting, if you look at these different rebels, there's different classes of rebels. Korach, all of our sages and sources agree, he was a sophisticated person. He was clever. He was noble, highborn, rich. He's a Levite. He's Moshe's first cousin. He comes from the most prestigious line of our people. And he has some dreams of grandeur. And he's motivated by envy. And he views himself as the replacement of Aaron. And there's 250 men who buy into the philosophy of Korach. The whole nation is holy. Why can't we be high priests? They too want to bring the incense. Dathan and Abiram, if you read the verses very carefully, they did not offer incense. In the showdown of the incense, it's 251 rebels, 250 plus Korach, against Aaron. Dathan and Abiram did not view themselves as high priests. They're a different class of rebels. They are the serial rabble-rousers, the serial malcontents. They're just there for the thrill of the conflict. Any rebellion against the establishment, against Moshe, against Aaron, they're in. They have an irremediable desire to rebel. The cause doesn't matter. If it wasn't Korach, it'll be someone else. They'd join it as well. This is a certain character type that we discover in our Parsha. They don't even want to be the high priest. They're not necessarily motivated by this idea that everyone's holy, everyone could be a high priest. They're just serial malcontents, people who cause problems. The next day, the entire congregation is gathered for the showdown. Korach, Rashi tells us, was working very hard the whole night to persuade all the tribes to join his cause. He told them, do you think that I only care about my grievance? I'm only rebelling for selfish reasons? Oh, no, 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 no. My whole rebellion is about you the people. These two, Moshe and Aaron, they take everything for themselves. He takes the kingship, he takes the priesthood. What about the rest of us? Korach was a very skilled demagogue. And the whole night, he's persuading, seducing the people to join his cause. And in the morning, the people are very sympathetic to Korach. And the presence of God descends upon the tabernacle. And God tells Moshe and Aaron, let's just get rid of these people. But they respond, no, that we have to get rid of Korach. Don't have your anger flare up against the entire congregation. So God accepts that. And he tells Moshe, speak to everyone and instruct the people to get some distance between you and the camp of Korach and Dathan and Abiram. Separate yourself from them and from their stuff. Make sure that you are not associated with them so you don't suffer their fate. Hearing this, the nation wises up to what's about to happen. They separate themselves from Korach, from Dathan, from Abiram. Dathan and Abiram, they stand stoically in front of their tent, together with their wives, their children, and their suckling infants. And Moshe then says something very startling. He speaks to the nation. And he says, I want to prove to you. So you know for sure that God sent me to do everything that I did. Korach is here claiming that I'm snatching greatness that I don't deserve. That's not truthfully mine. Korach is claiming that my appointments were a result of nepotism. Korach is claiming that I overlooked him inappropriately. But every decision that I made was instructed to me by God. Why is Aaron the high priest? Why are his sons the associate priests? Why is Elitzaphan ben Uziel the prince of the family of Kahas? It's all because God instructed me to do that. It's not from my own heart. And I'm going to prove it to you. Look at these people. Look at these Rebs. If they die like ordinary people, if they die in a method of death that has ever existed before, even if they die right now, if they die in an ordinary fashion, you know I'm a fraud. You know that God did not send me. And Korach is right. But if there's a brand new creation, a brand new way to die, if God right now creates something new, something that's never been seen before, the land, the earth opens its mouth and swallows all these Johnny Rebs and all of their possessions, and they descend alive into hell, then you know that these people are rebelling against God. Moshe finished his words. Instantly, the earth split. It opened its mouth. It swallowed them up, them, their homes, all the people who were part of this rebellion, all of their possessions, all of the possessions that Korach snatched in his envy were all gone. The 250 unnamed leaders of the people also perished. They weren't swallowed up, but they were consumed by a heavenly fire, just like the two sons of Aaron when they brought unauthorized incense. And then God tells Moshe, tell Elazar, son of Aaron the high priest, to take those 250 shovels, turn them into copper plates, and plate over the altar with them. That way anyone who sees the altar and is not a descendant of Aaron and is trying to usurp the role of the priests, someone who does an act of Korach, and they try to snatch the priesthood unjustly, just remember what happened to the last set of people who tried to do that. This is a very dramatic and unforgettable way to stamp out an insurrection. No one who witnessed it, which is the entire nation, no one had any doubt that Moshe was indeed acting solely as per the instruction of God. He silenced all the critics. Right, wrong. The next day, the entire congregation, they start complaining. Atem hamisem, you have caused the nation of God, members of the nation of God, to die. It's an amazing thing. Moshe made this whole speech. If God creates a new way to die, that proves that it's not me. I'm just acting based upon God's instruction. How can anyone challenge him, accuse him of doing something wrong after that amazing display? So maybe there's another idea over here. Every leader needs to know this. Just as every high priest is responsible for every event and every person in the nation, if you want to be a leader, you're going to have situations like this. There's no logical way to pin any blame on Moshe. There's no defensible argument to claim that Moshe is responsible for the death of Korach and his co-conspirators. But nevertheless, if something goes wrong in the community, the person at the top will be blamed no matter what. The nation accuses Moshe, accuses Aaron. Why did you kill the nation of God? This baseless accusation led to a plague. The plague began. And Moshe tells Aaron, bring incense and quickly run to offer it. This will stop the plague. Only this will stop the plague. Moshe knew the secret of how to stop plagues. He knew this because he had an inside man, an inside source. You see, when Moshe went to heaven to get the Torah, all the angels were very skeptical of him. What's this earthling doing over here? Flesh and blood amongst us? He is so out of place. But Moshe proved himself. And the angels took a liking to Moshe. And they gave him gifts. And the most fearsome of all the angels, the angel of death, gave him a special gift. A bit of very useful knowledge. He told him if there's a plague, the way to stop it is with Torah, with incense. So there's a plague. Moshe tells Aaron, bring the incense. And Aaron ran out amidst the congregation, standing between the living and the dead. He offers the incense, and the plague ceased. Many years ago, we did a whole podcast, if I'm not mistaken, on why exactly is the solution to a plague, why specifically is that incense. Now, to further reinforce Aaron's legitimacy as the priest, Aaron, to the exclusion of anyone else, Moshe proves this to the nation via the staffathon. Yeah, we already had an incense-a-thon. Now it's time for a staffathon. Every leader of a tribe took their staff and wrote his name on it. And Aaron represented the tribe of Levi. And he wrote his name on his staff. And all these staffs were placed in the tabernacle. A staff is like a walking stick. A crook, they call it, I think. A crook. And God tells Moshe, well, the one who's chosen by God, the tribe that's chosen by God, their staff will blossom. And this will finally silence all the critics. So every head of the tribe submits a staff with their name on it, and all the staffs are placed in the tabernacle. And the next day, Moshe brings out all the staffs and Aaron's staff with his name on it, representing the tribe of Levi. It's blossoming with flowers. It's budding with sprouts. It's studded with almonds. And Moshe returns all the staffs to all the heads of the tribes. Everyone saw this miracle that proved once and for all, once and forever, that Aaron, he's the one chosen to be the priest, and no one's going to mimic the insurrection of Korach. There's an interesting factoid about this story. Aaron's staff, you recall, makes an earlier appearance in the Torah. Exodus chapter 7. This is before all the plagues. Moshe and Aaron are going to Pharaoh to prove their credentials. They do a miracle, do a sign. Aaron takes his staff, throws it on the ground, and turns into a serpent. And of course, the Egyptians were duly impressed. And they released the Jews that day, right? No, that's not what happened. They were totally unimpressed. It's child's play. You're coming to Egypt. This is the center. This is the hub of necromancy, of sorcery, of magic. We do this. Every infant can do this. All of Pharaoh's necromancers, they take their staffs, they throw it into the ground, and it also turns into a serpent. They weren't impressed. But the episode ends, Aaron's staff swallowed their staffs after they had transformed back into staffs. Vayivla mate Aharon, Aaron's staff swallowed their staff, meaning there were staffs, crooks. Throw it to the ground, turns into a snake. Okay, but then it gets restored back to a staff, right? After all the sticks are back to being sticks, Aaron's staff swallows their staffs. Now, the word matosam, which means their staffs, appears exactly twice in the Torah. Once in Exodus chapter 7, and once in our Parsha. God tells Moshe. Moshe tells the people. Every prince submits their staff. There are 12 staffs, and the staff of Aaron is amidst their staffs. Betoch matosam. Again, those words, their staffs, matosam, appears twice in the Torah. Exodus 7:12. And in our Parsha, Bamidbar 17:21. And in both instances, it's Aaron's staff dueling other staffs. It's Aaron versus the necromancer. It's Aaron, the head of the tribe of Levi, dueling against the other tribes. So the Baal Turim cites an incredible midrash. I saw this now for the first time. It's year 10 of the Parsha podcast. There's all this new stuff that we haven't seen. The majority, we saw like 1%, not even probably. There's so much that we haven't seen. Baal Turim cites a midrash, which says that the same thing happened in both instances. Just as Aaron's staff swallowed the staffs of the necromancers, sorcerers of Pharaoh, so too when Aaron's staff was pitted against the other staffs of the other tribes, it too swallowed their staffs, and then it expelled it, disgorged it in the morning. That's what he says. That's what the midrash says. Now, if you're trying to impress the Egyptians, you don't drop a staff and turn it into a serpent. That's child's play. But if your staff swallows their staff, that's not something they can match. But what's the purpose of this miracle? Why is it important that when all the staffs in the staffathon are placed in the tabernacle, Aaron's staff swallows their staffs? So the Baal Turim explains. This is a very interesting point. Almost unbelievable point. He writes that if all 12 staffs from all 12 tribes were all present in the tabernacle overnight, they would have all blossomed, they would have all flowered, they would have all sprouted, they would have all budded with almonds. There is no way to spend so much time in the tabernacle and not to flower. They would have all flowered. That's the power of the tabernacle. It makes the thing desire grow and flourish. So, the only way to prevent all the staffs from flowering, from budding, from blossoming, would be if they were subsumed within Aaron's staff. Amazing. Now, it reminds me of an idea that we spoke about in the past. Which year of the Parsha podcast? I don't remember. I guess I could look it up in my notes. But at the very end of the Torah, the penultimate Parsha of the Torah, Ha'azinu, Moshe begins his song by describing the Torah as water. 4 different types of water. And the Gaon of Vilna used to say that Torah is like water. Just as water creates growth, creates flowering, so too Torah creates growth creates flowering. Now, if you have a weed in the ground and you pour water on that weed, the weed will grow. If you have a flower and you pour water on that flower in the ground, the flower will grow. Whatever you pour water on, the good things, the bad things, the weeds and the thorns, they'll grow. The trees, the grasses, the vegetables, the produce, the good things, they'll also grow. Says the Gaon of Vilna, what Torah does to a person makes him grow. If a person has corrupt, corrosive character, and they learn Torah, they study Torah, they're going to grow. They'll become even worse. And that's why Torah must be built upon a firm bedrock of righteous, refined character. That's what you have. You pour the Torah upon it, that's what's going to grow. But if someone has corruption, if someone has unrefined character, Torah is like water. It will make the weeds, the thorns, the thistles grow. Similar sort of idea. Aaron is the only one who has legitimate claim to the priesthood. We know that for sure. You place Aaron's staff, it will sprout. But the tabernacle, it's just going to make someone grow. It's just going to create flourishing. And even the ones who don't deserve it, even the ones who maybe don't represent, who don't represent priesthood, they'll grow as well. Very interesting idea. The staffs of the rebels, not necessarily rebels, but the ones who are questioning or who are yet unconvinced about the supremacy of Aaron, their staffs would have flourished, would have blossomed, and it was resolved by Aaron's staff swallowing them up. Now, this staff is part of the legacy of our people. It was preserved for posterity. It's a permanent testament to the nation. That no one may challenge Aaron, not Aaron and the priests, not the Levites. Aaron's staff, the budding staff, the flowering staff, was placed in the Holy of Holies next to a few cherished artifacts of our people to remind our nation that the tribe of the Levites was selected by God to be the Levites, and Aaron and his family were selected by God to be the priests. If someone were to challenge that, if a new Korach arose, he too will be swiftly dispatched. The Parsha ends with a reiteration of the role of Aaron, of the role of the Levites, and of the special privileges of the priesthood and of the Levites. Let's go a bit backstage, if you will. The Torah spends a lot of time talking about Korach. Korach and his insurrection and the various co-conspirators in every step of this conflict. It's very important for us to know the story, to study it. And at the end of the saga, when Aaron's staff is placed near the ark for posterity, chapter 17, verse 5, we read a very interesting verse. It's a testament, a memorial for the Israelites. No foreigner, no non-Kohen, who's not a descendant of Aaron, should come to offer Ktoras. V'lo yihiyeh keKorach v'chadaso. And you should not be like Korach and his congregation. Says the Talmud, we're commanded in the Torah to not mimic Korach and his posse. Korach launched a rebellion. We don't do rebellions against Moshe, against Aaron. And we don't dispute, debate, argue in the manner of Korach and his people. It's actually a commandment in the Torah. Whatever Korach did, we mustn't do. So it's very important for us to understand exactly what Korach did wrong. And we find a very interesting Mishnah in Pirkei Avos in Chapters of the Fathers, chapter 5, that identifies or that distills exactly where Korach went wrong. Every machlokas, every dispute that's for the sake of heaven will endure. If it's not for the sake of heaven, it will not endure. What's the example of a dispute that's done for the sake of heaven? That's the dispute of Shammai and Hillel. Hillel and Shammai, the two great leaders of the people, they had disputes. But that's a good type of dispute. It's for the sake of heaven. And what's an example? What's the example of a dispute that's not for the sake of heaven? Zem machlokas. This is the dispute of Korach and his entire congregation. Arguments are things that we like. Disputes are encouraged. But there are different types of disputes. There's the disputes, the arguments of Hillel and Shammai, and that's the complete opposite of the disputes of Korach and his people. Korach argued against Moshe, against Aaron, but his argument's not for the sake of heaven. Hillel and Shammai, they had arguments, quite strident arguments. They disagreed on many things, but it was done for the sake of heaven. What the Mishnah is telling us is that what Korach was proposing, that was not anathema. But the method and the style of how he was going about it, that was not for the sake of heaven, and that's where he went wrong. We don't believe in monochromatic uniformity. Disputes, disagreements are okay. And guess what? They're even encouraged. And I'm going to tell you why they're indispensable. They're productive. They can help unlock great treasures when done properly, when done as Hillel and Shammai did it. Korach's dispute, the way in which he engaged in the dispute is untenable, and it led to death. Korach had a perspective. The entire nation is all holy. And we said earlier, there's a very good grounds for that perspective. After all, by Mount Sinai, the nation was told, you'll be a kingdom of priests. So is there anything wrong with posing the question, or at least before we're told not to question the priesthood of Aaron? Is there something inherently wrong with posing the question, well, why can't we have 250 high priests? It's a dispute. It's a debate. It's a clash of different perspectives. But the method in which Korach partook in this dispute, that was rotten. We see Korach's bad character throughout the whole story. First thing we learn about him, it was the product of envy. He's envious that Moshe appointed Elitzaphan son of Uziel as the leader of this family, the family of Kas. And he's just upset that he was passed over for a promotion. And this grievance caused him to question legitimacy of Moshe. The hallmark of a dispute for the sake of heaven means a dispute to try to find the truth. What's the truth? What indeed does the Almighty want? That is not only okay, it's our number one responsibility to identify the answer to that question. Hillel and Shammai are great heroes. And they had very serious debates, very serious disagreements. But it was done for the sake of heaven, to try to find what the truth is. Korach wasn't looking for the truth. He was all up in a tizzy because of his own envy. It was all motivated by envy. Hillel and Shammai, by contrast, they had very serious debates. We have documentation of the length of some of their debates. We have sources talk about a debate that lasted 2.5 years. Some of the brightest minds in human history debating for years. And it's all for the sake of heaven. And it's all holy, it's all righteous. A second debate took 3 years. Great minds assembled in intense debate. And it's all for the sake of heaven. And we find more about these two groups, the house of Shammai, house of Hillel, that not only did the debates not harm their relationship, it actually enhanced their relationship. Because they're both united in pursuit of truth, they want to find out what the will of God is. They're debating for the sake of heaven. It's not personal. And once they find the truth, they're happy. And they're willing to forego on their initial position because their ultimate pursuit is that of truth. But I want to tell you something a little bit further. It's a subtle point. It's profound. This is like the end of the podcast, so maybe it's like your brain is already too tired. I'm going to say it anyhow. These are one of the things you got to say at the beginning when everyone's fresh. Not only is debate okay, is vigorous, strident, even rancorous debate okay, it's good. And it unlocks something you cannot get anywhere else. If you've ever had the great privilege of studying in a yeshiva, you know that this is true. But even if you just went to visit it for a half hour, it's a life-changing experience. The first thing that the visitor will notice is that, it depends on which yeshiva, the truth is. The kinds of yeshivas that I went to, this is true. They all look like clones. You could see a room with 1,000 men. The kinds of yeshivas I went to, there's no women in anywhere. No women, only men. And they're all dressed like clones, matching black and white. What is going on over here? But that's where the uniformity ends. You walk into the study hall, and it's very loud. Because you'll see pairs of study partners screaming at each other for hours straight. It's an unbelievable thing. They're screaming at each other for hours. It's just ferocious debate. And if you try to examine what they're studying, you open up the Talmud, and even the Talmud, this is 1,000+ years ago, the codification of all the debates of our sages. And it's designed just as if you're being thrown into the academy from a couple thousand years ago. We have questions and answers. And us as students are trying to figure out, well, you have a question, you have an answer, someone's asking a question, and someone's giving an answer, they must see the subject differently. Because he's asking a question, he's giving an answer. And then if you look at the margins, the commentaries and the margins of the Talmud, there's also always nonstop debate. And we're trying to disentangle this whole web. And when someone asks a question in the Talmud, we have to say, okay, well, what are the assumptions of the question? And when someone gives an answer in the Talmud, well, how does the answer the question? Which is, again, this is one of the great benefits of studying the yeshiva, is that you learn the mechanics of argumentation. And one of the best questions you could ask is, okay, I had a question, and now I have an answer. Does the answer the question? Sometimes people can say words. It's like, it's frustrating to watch like a political debate because no one ever answers the question, right? They just talk about something else. That's why for the yeshiva student, it's painful to watch it because all you see is just the big logical leaps that no one's addressing here. Does the answer the question by accepting the assumption of the question, just introducing another variable, or does the answer challenge, reject, repudiate the assumption of the question? I have Rashi commentary, I have the Tosfos commentary. They're both geniuses beyond what I could fathom. And they know all of Torah beyond what I could fathom. And they say different opinions. And there's a question that the Tosfos asks on Rashi. And there's no way that Rashi could have missed this. Not possible Rashi could have missed this. It's all debate. And it's debate, and you're encouraged to kind of be part of this labyrinthine debate. It's a masterclass of logic and meritocratic debate. The idea of docility, passivity, there's no place for that in the crossfire of the yeshiva. And the Talmud, in fact, itself talks about how you're supposed to study. You're supposed to argue. Says the Talmud, even a father and a son, a teacher and a student, when they study properly, they become enemies. It's a war. But when they're done studying, then they love each other more than anything else. This is a description of a debate for the sake of heaven. The debate is glorious, is one of the bedrocks of how you advance personally. And the debates of Korach is not for the sake of heaven. It's flawed, it's corrupted, it's rooted in rotten character, in a character defect. That's what's happening over here. The character defect is creating this monstrosity of Korach. It's all on a foundation of corruption, not for the sake of heaven. Hillel and Shammai, by contrast, the debates of the Talmud, it's all for the sake of heaven. Here's why debates are so indispensable. It's a big subject. The whole subject of the Parsha is the arguments, the conflict. It's the machlokas, in the words of our sages. Korach has a machlokas, has a dispute, a conflict, a debate, a disagreement, but it's the wrong type. Let's talk about the right type. Here's my question. It's a fundamental question. How is it possible, if you have two very talented people, very knowledgeable people who are experts in Torah and in logic and in every component of reasoning, and they're debating for the sake of heaven. They're seeking truth, and they're debating on the merits. How is it possible that they can arrive at opposite conclusions? How is it possible that there's a dispute between Rashi and Tosfos? How is that possible? Hillel and Shammai, they're both doing it for the sake of heaven, right? And they spent a lot of time exhaustive debating, and they reach an irreconcilable impasse. How's it possible? Here's the secret. And this is why debate is so indispensable. Do you know why? Because that's actually the goal. Yes, that's the goal. We each bear a soul. And we may think that souls are just like this fungible spiritual spark. The truth is, it's almost the opposite. The body's like a fungible vessel for the soul. We have this idea you can take a soul out of one body, put it in a different body. It's all the same. It's all the same. The soul is where the individuality really lies. That's where the real uniqueness lies. That's the real fingerprint that separates you from everyone else. And all of us have no idea how to access that. How do you identify your soul? How do you find what are the characteristics that are deeply embedded in the soul that provide you direction for what you're supposed to do in life? You're flying blind in the most important test of them all. You must identify your individuality. You must identify the characteristics of your soul that differentiate you from everyone else. Because you have to know, what must I do different than everyone else? You must discover your individuality, and you have no idea how to do it. Here's how you do it. When two people are debating for the sake of heaven, and they're not motivated by biases, by bad character, the Torah that's being poured, the water that's being poured, it's being poured on a righteous plant, tree. We're not watering the weeds. We're not like Korach, amplifying this envy, building a monstrosity of envy, finding all these justifications just to try to actualize his envy. It's a proper debate for the sake of heaven. Everyone wants to find the truth. And you start studying with your partner and they just don't get it. Are they stupid? So some people may think they're not intelligent. Their brain doesn't work. There's a word that people used to say, but then they said it's not appropriate to say because it's not politically correct. Apparently now it's a little bit more politically correct. I don't know. How is it possible? It's so clear to you. And it's so clear to them. They think that you're the imbecile. And you're offended because this is the Almighty's holy Torah and this person's corrupting it. So you start screaming at them. And they start screaming at you. And there's a war. And you're fighting the war. And you reach a point where you've exhausted all the discussion and all the angles and all the variables, and you still don't agree. Well, you've done what your study partner has done, is you've uncovered the core. You've reached the point where your soul and his soul are just different. And that's why it's not possible for you, provided you're doing it properly, it's not possible for you to totally agree. Because ultimately, your soul and their soul are different. And your study partner has done a tremendous service for you. It started off as war, and it ends up that you love them more than anyone else in the world. Or almost. Because nothing could have helped you arrive at the discovery of your uniqueness, at the identification, at the uncovering of your soul, quite like this form of debate. Shammai and Hillel, House of Shammai, House of Hillel, they reached an impasse. And this was a debate for the sake of heaven. One of them have a soul that's more like Isaac, and one has a soul that's more like Abraham or Jacob. One's more a soul that's rooted in the characteristic and the attribute of judgment, of strict judgment, and one has a soul that's rooted in the attribute of kindness, of chesed, of mercy, of rachamim. Your study partner has enabled you to discover yourself. This has nothing to do with Korach. Korach, he was motivated by envy. He wasn't seeking the truth. His debate is not at all for the sake of heaven. He ended up with nothing. Not only did he not get the prize, he lost everything that he had previously. But debate, it's cherished. It's vital. It's indispensable. One of the great sages, on the festival of Shavuos, the festival that marks the day that we got the Torah, he had a big celebration. Why are you celebrating? Because if not for this day, how many people are there in the marketplace named Yosef? There are so many people with my name, and everyone's just the same. Thanks to the Torah, I merited individuality. Now we know the secret. We understand how a dispute can linger forever. There's just no resolution. He says this, he says that, it's recorded in the Talmud for posterity. Rashi tells us they just disagree. And there's no way for us to create a resolution. Now we know how this works. By the way, there are projects that have mapped out all the disputes between Rashi and Tosfos, thousands of disputes probably, throughout the Talmud, and found a continuous theme in all of them that shows that how all the positions of Rashi, that first of all, they're all consistent with themselves. There are 70 facets to the Torah. Torah's infinite. And you have a Torah that matches your soul. Everyone at Sinai had a bespoke revelation. But also how you could almost identify someone's characteristic. You could identify someone's soul via their debates. A fascinating, I said it's a bit subtle, it's a bit profound, it's into the podcast, but a fascinating lesson on the imperative for debate, just not the way Korach did it. What a fun exploration of the Parsha. Big time backstage, But that's our mandate. It's year 10 of the Parsha podcast. I'm sitting in the Torch Center in Houston, Texas. My email just says, rabbiwolbe@gmail.com. How do you spell Wolbe? I got an email this week, WOLFE. Why the F? Why do I have to get the F? Somehow the email came to me. So it was rabbiwolbe@gmail.com. I got the correct email. Wolfie? Wolf? I guess I'll take it. Benjamin's compared to a wolf. Not the end of the world. WOLB as in boy, B as in Bravo, B as in baseball, basketball. The next one I was told. I would have been so happy if I was like 12 or 13. The next one. Brought me no joy. My friend, who was so excited, paid a lot of money to go to San Antonio to the game. I said to him, well, did you, like, how do you, what, do you still feel joy? Like, what did it bring to you? I didn't joke with him about the fan dividend. I said, like, what now? You've climbed the top of the mountain. First time in your lifetime, the Knickerbockers won. What did it bring to you? What do you have? How has your life improved? Nothing. Nothing. It's empty. It's vacuousness. We have the Almighty's Holy Torah. You study a little bit of Torah, you're forever changed. You're forever uplifted. How privileged are we? I hope everyone has a wonderful day. A sensational and really productive rest of your week. And of course, the highlight of it all, the root of all blessing and amazing, magnificent Shabbos upcoming. I have a thing that I do with my kids, especially when they're young. Every Friday I say, well, what's tonight? What's tonight? They all know, like, it's Shabbos. We have to celebrate. Amazing. You got to get that into our kids to realize it's such a special thing that gives us. It's the Mikar HaBracha. It's the root of all blessing. All blessing that exists only thanks to this amazing that the Almighty gave us. How fortunate are we? Have an amazing Shabbos. And please, God, with the help of the Almighty, we'll talk again in good health and in good spirits next week. And as always, the image says, rabbiwolbe@gmail.com.